As super teams arose and stars partnered to chase championships, Lillard's message was always clear. I will be in Portland if you want to team up with me. But now Lillard wants out, and he's requested a trade.
Were the Trailblazers surprised?
No. It was a straw at you, uncertainty about the future of the Blazers franchise.
I'm not going to speak on the Blazers.
Damian Lillard has finally decided to run for the grind. After 11 years in Portland with the Blazers, he has requested a trade. What's next for Dame, and what's next for the team? Let's find out. Welcome everybody to the very first episode of the Portland Trailblazers MyNBA franchise here on NBA 2K24. I'm excited to get started, and I hope you guys are as well. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new for more 2K24 content. And of course, don't forget to use code OctagonalGaming, spelled as it is on screen, for $20 off your first SeatGeek order, especially with football season here and basketball season on the horizon. Of course, the team we are selecting for this year's franchise mode is the Portland Trailblazers. This is a team who I've wanted to pick for a long time, and I think with the Damian Lillard trade request, this is the perfect time to do it. For those of you who are new to my channel and have never watched a 2K series of mine, I love getting my subscribers and viewers immersed by letting them make custom prospects for the draft classes. If that's something you're interested in, make sure to go join my Discord server. The link to that is in the description. So let's analyze this Damian Lillard trade request because it's pretty complex. Lillard has been with the Blazers for 11 years now. He's been the face of this team and one of the greatest players in the history of the franchise. He's been unbelievably loyal to this team, maybe loyal to a fault, and I understand this move in his perspective. He's 33 years old, he's not getting any younger, and realistically, his timeline of competing for a championship does not match up with Portland's. Now, while he is still in his prime and he is playing the best basketball of his career, he hasn't exactly been graceful on his way out. He's made it very clear that he is only willing to go to the Miami Heat, which certainly diminishes his trade value because nobody else can trade for him. And the Miami Heat do not exactly have a package that would satisfy us. Pause. So that has put the Blazers in between a rock and a hard place. Do they do well by their star player of 11 years and trade him to the place that he wants to go to? Or do they get the most possible value back for him they can? What we're going to try to do today is both of those things. I think it would be in everybody's best interest that we trade Damian Lillard where he wants to go to the Miami Heat. He deserves to compete for a title. And I think by getting the most possible value, the best way of doing that would be adding a third team in the deal. So we're going to start by taking as many of Miami's draft picks as we can. That starts with their 2028 first rounder, along with pick swaps in 2024 and 2027. The Heat do not exactly have a lot of draft picks. This is really all we can do in terms of acquiring draft capital. The Heat also do not have many young players on their roster, and there's really only two young guys who I think would interest us, with Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Nikola Jovic. I think the Miami Heat ideally would like to keep one of these two, and I think it would be in the best interest of both teams if Nikola Jovic is the player that is in the trade. I think Jaime Jaquez is more ready to get playoff minutes for the Heat, and I think Jovic has more long-term upside for the Blazers. The best trade asset that Miami realistically has is Tyler Herro. He's a budding young star. He's only 23 years old, and he's a great scorer. But I don't think he's a good fit for this Blazers team because he's a very poor defender, and our backcourt already is not very good defensively. So the third team is going to add Tyler Herro. I think the Dallas Mavericks could make sense, add a third scorer. The Brooklyn Nets could work, add another young player for their core. I think the Utah Jazz could work as well. They're just trying to accumulate as much talent as possible. And then I think the San Antonio Spurs make sense as well. Try to get another scorer to take the load off of Wemby. Of these four teams, I actually think the Utah Jazz are the team that makes the most sense in terms of giving us assets that we're going to like. Now, Utah already has a pretty similar player to Herro, that being Jordan Clarkson, but the reason why the Jazz are so willing to acquire Herro is because Clarkson's actually going to be in the deal. He is headed to the Blazers. The main reason why I wanted to negotiate with Utah, however, is because they have a gold mine of young assets and a treasure chest of first-round picks over the next 5 years. Of these selections, I think we will look to acquire the Timberwolves first-round pick in 2025. I'm not convinced Minnesota is going to be all that good at the team, so I think that pick could end up being pretty valuable. Of the young players they have, these rookies are obviously the guys we would want the most. I think one of Taylor Hendricks or Keontae George would be the perfect centerpiece of a Damian Lillard trade, but the Jazz are not the ones getting Damian Lillard. They're only getting Tyler Hero, so because of that, there's no way they would be willing to give up either Hendricks or George. I think it would be one of these slightly older players. Either Talen Horton-Tucker, Ochai Agbaji, or Colin Sexton would make the most sense of this group. And of these three, we're going to look to acquire Ochai Agbaji. He's 23 years old, entering his second season, and this kid's a winner. Final Four MVP as a senior in 2022 with the Kansas Jayhawks. Rock chalk. So this is what the deal looks like so far, and it can't go through yet, but if we add Duncan Robinson's salary, it can. Now, the one problem with this trade is I don't think the Jazz would be getting enough value. I feel like that's too much to give up for Tyler Hero. So we're going to add Keon Johnson and a second-round pick from the Atlanta Hawks, and then in a separate trade, I had the Miami Heat add 2 more second-rounders to give to the Jazz. So this is what the deal looks like. We will be trading away Damian Lillard, Moses Brown, Keon Johnson, and a second-round pick, and we'll be acquiring 2 pick swaps, 2 unprotected first-round picks, along with 4 players, being Jordan Clarkson, Ochai Agbaji, Nikola Jovic, and Duncan Robinson. I think this is fair value for Damian Lillard, and I'm worried for the Blazers in real life that they're not going to get this much, but I think 2 draft picks, 2 pick swaps, 2 intriguing young players, and 2 solid veterans is a fair offer for Damian Lillard. And with that, the 3-team deal will be completed. Damian Lillard has been traded to the Miami Heat, and now we have a completely new roster. But we're not done with moves yet. We're going to look to trade away Duncan Robinson for a big. We do not have a lot of front court depth, so we're going to trade one big salary for another, and we're actually going to be sending him to the Jazz, ironically. So there's another part to this 3-team deal. Duncan Robinson will go to Utah in exchange for Kelly Olynyk and a trade exception just so the salaries can match. So this is what the final trade looks like. I tried to color code it so it was easy for you guys to read it. But basically, we'll be acquiring Jordan Clarkson, Ochai Agbaji, Kelly Olynyk, Nikola Jovic, 2 unprotected first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. I think this is a pretty fair deal for all 3 teams. The Heat get their superstar. Damian Lillard is happy. The Jazz add another legitimately good asset with Tyler Hero in the long term, and we get a boatload of stuff for Damian Lillard. And with that, we've got our roster set up. And now it's time to introduce you guys to the 2023 Portland Trail Blazers. Normally, when a small market team like the Blazers trades away a superstar player, it's a long time until they're able to find a new one. But the Blazers ended up getting super lucky during this year's draft, having Scoot Henderson fall to the 3rd pick. This is the type of player who I believe that the Blazers can build around as the #1 option for a championship contender. Scoot is an unbelievably explosive athlete. That's the first thing you'll notice when you watch him. Now, the rest of this game could use some polish. Defensively, he is a work in progress. His jump shot does need quite a bit of work, although he's only 19 years old. And I think with his athleticism, with his quickness, his speed, his explosiveness, his get-off, and obviously his vertical ability and his ability to play above the rim, I think that gives him an unbelievably high ceiling, along with the fact that he's been playing professional basketball for 2 years now with the NBA's G League Ignite. I think that's going to make him very battle-ready for the NBA, and because of that, he is going to be a day-1 starter with our team. Scoot has a lot of similarities to other freakishly athletic, highly drafted guards over the last 15 years, guys like Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, and John Wall. What do those 3 players have in common other than the fact that they're all really good? None of those guys were first options on championship teams. Actually, none of them ever won a championship to begin with. And all of those guys became injury prone as their careers went along. So what we have to do with Scoot Henderson is A, correctly build a championship team around him, and B, put Scoot in the position to have a long, healthy career with the Trailblazers. So that now poses a question about the rest of the roster of how many pieces on this team are likely going to be able to fit with Scoot in the long term, and we're going to have to spend these next few seasons figuring that out. I'm intrigued by the fit of Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons in the backcourt, and I think the two of them actually can work pretty well together. Simons, this is the highest rated player on the roster. He's the best scorer on the team, and I expect him to have a big year as the #1 scoring option. He can play on the ball and off the ball offensively, and I think his experience playing off ball to Damian Lillard is going to be helpful with a long-term fit with Scoot Henderson. His defense leaves a lot to be desired, but his offense is really good. He's a very aesthetically pleasing player to watch. He's a good shooter, he can get to the basket, and he's a good athlete. There are two other guys who I think are surefire starters. The first one being Jeremy Grant, who's an all-around good veteran who really doesn't have many major weaknesses. Grant was kind of a late bloomer, breaking out in his late 20s, and he's coming off arguably the best year of his career last year in Portland. I think he's best suited to be a second or third option on a team because he's a solid scorer, but not necessarily an alpha, and I think he's a pesky and tough defender. Now, the Blazers just signed him to a massive contract in the offseason, 5 years for around $170 million. In other words, he is going to be here for the long haul. I hope you guys like Jeremy Grant because he's not going anywhere anytime soon. At the 5, we've got Jusuf Nurkic, the Bosnian beast. Also 29 years old, Nurkic is now one of the longest tenured players on the team. He's a solid back-to-the-basket big man whose game has evolved offensively to more than that. His touch has really improved, he's become a pretty good shooter, and defensively he's not great per se, but he can hold his own. He doesn't necessarily have that one trait or one attribute that he's really good at, but there aren't many glaring weaknesses with his game, and he's all around a fine starting caliber player. So now the question is, who is going to be the 5th starter with those 4 other players at the 3? Could it be Jordan Clarkson, Shaedon Sharpe, Matisse Thybulle, Ochai Agbaji, or Nasir Little? I think all 5 of these players will get the opportunity to start at the 3, but for now, I think Ochai Agbaji is probably the best fit to start with this group, and he will open up the season as a starter for us. Agbaji, of course, was part of the Damian Lillard package coming off his rookie season in Utah. He's a very well-rounded player for somebody who's 23 years old. He's a really, really good defensive player on the perimeter. He can shoot the ball, and he's an impressive athlete. He can drive to the basket well, and he really improved as last year went along, which suggests that I think he can continue to improve in the NBA. As I mentioned earlier, this guy is a winner. At Kansas, he led the Jayhawks to a national title. He was the #1 option on that team. Now, obviously, he's probably not going to be a #1 option on an NBA contender, but I think that winning DNA is going to be good for the culture. So those 5 guys are going to be the starters for now, and again, we're going to give other players the opportunity to start, especially at the 3, and with injuries and whatnot, other players are obviously going to be in and out of the starting lineup. Let's look at the bench unit led by the 6th man, Jordan Clarkson. I know it says he's currently wearing number 0. Don't worry, we're going to change his number. Nobody is wearing 0. Jordan Clarkson can put the ball in the bucket, and I think he's a good fit off the bench because he is a microwave scorer who can get hot. The rest of his game isn't super well-rounded. He's not some great defender, but he can score. And having somebody who can be your microwave scorer off the bench is very useful, especially because the guy who used to do that for this team, Anthony Simons, is now in the starting lineup. One of the players I'm most excited about on this roster is 20-year-old Shaedon Sharpe. Outside of Scoot Henderson, I think Sharpe very easily has the highest ceiling of any player on this team. Now, that's not the only thing that's high about Shaedon Sharpe, because he can jump very high. This guy is an unbelievable world-class athlete, and he showed a lot of flashes in the rest of his game as a rookie. He's not a bad jump shooter. Defensively, I think he's going to continue to improve. He's got good size and length, but obviously it's all about the athleticism with him, all about the highlight dunks. And I think the flashes that he showed last year, along with his athleticism, really give him a super high ceiling. And if there's any player on this team, along with Scoot Henderson, who's going to be an all-star, it's going to be Shaedon Sharpe. We're going to give him opportunities to start as well, try to get him and Scoot on the floor together as much as possible, and I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if Shaedon Sharpe is just good enough to completely take the starting small forward spot. I think Matisse Thybulle is one of the bigger wild cards on this team. He's a very intriguing player because defensively, I mean, this guy is locked down. He will guard your best player, and he will guard them well. Now, the problem is he's a very offensively limited player. If he was a good catch-and-shoot guy, I think he could be a $20 million player in this league. The problem is he isn't. He's only 26 years old, and shooting is a very learnable skill. So I think he still has plenty of time to develop the jump shot, ideally from 3, but also he cannot shoot the mid-range at all. He doesn't really have any ability driving to the basket, and he's also not a very good playmaker. So offensively, he's just not good. Right now, he's a one-sided player, but if he can develop the jump shot, he's going to have a very steady role for a long time. Nasir Little, I think, is an interesting player. He just signed a 4-year extension and what I think is a pretty team-friendly deal. I think he's a guy who can give high-energy minutes off the bench. Probably not somebody you will ever want as a full-time starter, but this is a guy who's improving as a shooter, solid athlete. He's a pretty good defensive player. Even though he's only 6'5", he can bang down low with the big boys. He's got the quickness and toughness to be able to defend the perimeter, but switch inside onto bigs. Despite the fact that he's only 6'5", he plays a lot bigger than that. And then Kelly Olynyk will be getting a lot of our minutes as the backup 5. He was also just acquired today from the Jazz. The name of his game is his ability to stretch the floor. He's one of the better shooting bigs in the league. At 32 years old, he's the oldest player on the roster. He's been in the league for over a decade, and he's a solid all-around veteran. He's not all that good of a defensive player, but I'm hoping that Matisse Thybulle and Nasir Little will be able to anchor the defense off the bench to where Kelly Olynyk does not have a ton of pressure defensively to really lead the way. So these 5 guys will be the second unit to start the year, and these are the 10 players who will open the season in the rotation. However, injuries happen, players perform poorly, and that's going to open up an opportunity for younger guys on the roster to potentially enter the rotation, and there are a few guys who I would like to mention. The first of which is Nikola Jovic. I think he's got a lot of potential. He's only 20 years old, and I think he's got a really intriguing all-around skill set. He's got great size and length. He's 6'10", but I think he's got some guard-like abilities. He still has a long ways to go as a shooter, but I think he's got a natural feel as a playmaker, and I think his size and length will give him a lot of versatility on the defensive end of the floor, and I think he could become a really good defensive player in due time. He's still got a long ways to go in his development. He's probably going to spend a lot of time in the G League, but I think there is some real potential with him. Next up, we've got Chris Murray, drafted in the first round out of Iowa, the twin brother of Kings forward Keegan Murray. I think Chris Murray has a lot of similarities in his game to his twin brother. They've both got that smooth lefty stroke, and they're both all-around solid players. I don't think Chris Murray has the shot creation ability that his twin brother Keegan does, and I think that's why Keegan Murray is regarded as the better long-term prospect. But other than that, I don't think Chris Murray is that far behind in terms of having an overall skill set. Jabari Walker's a pretty intriguing player. He's only 6'7", but I do think he's going to be used as a big when he gets opportunities to play. But I think he's got an opportunity as well to be a solid catch-and-shoot guy in the league, entering his second season out of Colorado. And then we've got the 19-year-old rookie, Ryan Rupert, another guy who already has professional experience having played for the New Zealand Breakers. I think Rupert is really raw, and he's got a long ways to go. He's probably not going to see many minutes in the NBA this year, but he's going to get an opportunity to play most likely in the G League. And with his size, length, and age, I think there is some real long-term potential with him, and we could be looking at a good player a few years down the line. Along with those 4 guys, we've also got some players who are on two-way contracts as well with John Butler and Ibu Badji, both of whom are bigs. We need bigs, so if either of those 2 guys develop, that would be great. I also want to take a look at our draft pick stash. As it stands now, we currently have 7 first-round picks over the next 5 years, which isn't like some crazy number, but I think it is a pretty good starting point. Keep in mind our current first-round pick is heavily protected. I don't think that's going to be a big issue, though, at least for now. We already went over the rotation, but again, this is what we've got. Scoot, Simons, Ochai, Grant, and Nurkic will be the starting lineup to open up the year. But again, that's going to change based on matchups and whatnot, particularly at the small forward position, depending on who we're playing against. In the next episode, we've got our opening day matchup on the road against the Los Angeles Clippers. Normally, I play 2 games per episode. So within the first 3 weeks of the year, what other game would you guys like to see us play? Make sure to let me know down below in the comments. Also, make sure to let me know what you thought of today's episode, what you thought of the Damian Lillard trade. I hope you guys enjoyed this one and are excited for more of the Portland Trail Blazers, MyNBA franchise, here on NBA 2K24. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Peace out.